Mr. Speaker, this spending review is not worth the paper that it is written on, because the Chancellor has completely lost control. This is the spend now, tax later review, because the Right Honourable Lady knows she will need to come back here in the autumn with yet more taxes, and a cruel summer of speculation awaits. How can we possibly take this Chancellor seriously after the chaos of the last 12 months? We were assured, Mr. Speaker, we were assured at the election that Labour's plans involved barely any additional spending or borrowing. Now the Chancellor parades her largesse. Hundreds of billions in additional spending over this Parliament. The initial profile for that spending was, of course, significantly front-loaded, but the Chancellor now expects us to believe that she will let spending rise by only 1.2% a year. There is no chance whatsoever of that happening. For the lesson of the last year has been that when the going gets tough, the Right Honourable Lady blinks. She presented herself as the Iron Chancellor, but what we have seen is the tin-foil Chancellor, flimsy and ready to fold in the face of the slightest pressure. She said she would not fiddle her fiscal rules, then she did. She said she wouldn't make any unfunded commitments, but with the humiliation of the winter fuel U-turn, she just has. She looked business leaders in the eye and said no more taxes. But we all know what happened next, and we all know what is coming in the autumn. Her own backbenchers, her cabinet colleagues, Labour's trade union paymasters, even the Prime Minister himself, they have all seen that she is weak. And they can smell the blood. They will be back for more, Mr. Speaker, and they will get it. These spending plans are a fantasy. And it's not the truth, Mr. Speaker, that the Chancellor has to maintain this fiction because she has left herself no room for manoeuvre. She is constantly teetering on the edge of blowing her fiscal rules, which she already changed to allow even more borrowing. And the only way she can claim to be meeting her rules is by pretending that she can control spending over the coming years. But, Mr. Speaker, let's look at the record so far. Borrowing in the last financial year came out $11 billion above even the OBR's March forecast, and 70% higher than the plans that she inherited from this side of the House.
Tax up, borrowing up.
But for someone so keen on borrowing, Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor seems strangely reticent to even use the word. Indeed, ministers bizarrely tell us that it is Labour's fiscal rules themselves that have, quote, generated investment. The reality is a little more straightforward. They have loosened the fiscal rules so they can borrow more. Borrow and borrow and borrow, allowing the national debt to continue to rise higher every single year while ministers pretend that it is not. An eye-watering £200 billion of additional borrowing in this Parliament compared to the plans set out in the last Conservative budget, with £80 billion more to be spent on debt interest alone. In fact, if she had retained our fiscal rules, as she said, they may laugh, Mr. Speaker. If she had retained our fiscal rules, as she said she would before the election, the OBR have confirmed that she would be breaking them right now. Mr. Speaker, our country is now vulnerable to even the smallest changes in the bond markets. Should we face a sudden external shock, we have no fiscal firepower left with which to respond, all thanks to the Right Honourable Lady's choices. So can I ask the Chancellor, will she be open about what she has done? Will she admit that she has made a conscious choice to borrow more and to accept higher debts? Does she accept this means interest rates and mortgages will be higher than they would otherwise have been, as the OBR themselves have said? And given she continues to claim that she has brought stability to the public finances, can I ask her what on earth her definition of stability is? And, Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor must be delighted that she does not have to face a new OBR forecast today. Because if she did, she would have to set out how she will fund her humiliating U-turn on winter fuel payments, having already blown the savings on buying off her trade union paymasters last year. She said this week there was, and I quote, she said, still work to do to ensure that the sums add up. Hardly reassuring from the person in charge of the nation's finances, Mr. Speaker. You don't need to have worked at the Bank of England for a decade to know that that pitiful utterance is unlikely to soothe the markets. So can the Chancellor confirm categorically that there will be no additional borrowing to pay for this chaotic reversal? And if this is the case, can she explain how on earth it can be paid for without raising taxes? And can the Right Honourable Lady explain why last summer, apparently to avoid a run on the pound, Mr. Speaker, this measure was so urgent that pensioners had to be left in the cold over the last winter? What exactly has changed? Because it certainly hasn't been made possible by an improvement in the economy or the public finances, which the IFS said this week are both in a worse state now than when Labour came into office. And if we had an OBR forecast, we might also get some answers on how the government intends to find £3.5 billion to abolish the two-child benefit cap, which we are led to believe is imminent. Another addition to the ballooning welfare bill, another expensive surrender to the Labour left. And we would certainly get the OBR's assessment of the economic outlook following the tariffs. Changes the Right Honourable Lady knew full well were coming. Meanwhile, her deluge of taxes and regulations has left business confidence at record lows, costing people their livelihoods. Only yesterday, Mr. Speaker, we saw the latest evidence of that. Figures for last month show the number of people on payrolls fell by more than 100,000, after already falling by 55,000 in April. Unemployment is up by more than 10% since Labour came to office. The Right Honourable Lady may trumpet extra spending today, but is not the simple truth that she has trashed the economy and left no contingency in the face of a highly volatile global outlook? It's not the reality, Mr. Speaker, that the Chancellor knows she will have to come back in the autumn with more tax rises to fund these plans? Or can she assure us right now that this is not the case? Yes or no? We know that the Deputy Prime Minister has helpfully provided her with an entire brochure of tax rises that she will no doubt be perusing over the summer. The Corbynist catalogue, Mr. Speaker. And can the Chancellor confirm, as promised, can she confirm as promised that the income tax thresholds will not be frozen at the budget, a move she herself said would hurt working people? And, Mr. Speaker, what about the uncertainties in the departmental spending plan she has just set out today? Can she assure us that these plans will not be topped up, that no backroom deals have been cut with disgruntled cabinet ministers? Can she assure us that the capital allocations announced today will actually be spent on capital, not diverted in year, as she has in the past, day-to-day budgets to play more games with her fiscal rules. The Chancellor has had to impose a settlement on the Home Secretary because this spending review won't deliver for our hard-working police officers across the country. Instead, the Home Office budget gets squandered on asylum costs because this government simply doesn't have a plan on illegal migration. And as the Defence Secretary admitted, and I quote, "The government has lost control of our borders." Small boat crossings, Mr. Speaker, are up 42% on the same point last year. On energy, at a time when businesses up and down the country are struggling with high energy costs, the Chancellor has chosen today to fund the Energy Secretary's vanity projects like GB Energy.
Where is he?
And while we welcome the announcements on expanding nuclear capacity, the scale of ambition is a downgrade on the commitments made previously on this side of the House. Mr. Speaker, the party opposite barely mentioned farming in their manifesto. And now we know why. It's not enough to have hit the farmers in our country with a family farm tax. Today, what we see in black and white is a choice to make further cuts to the vital grants on which many farmers rely. A huge betrayal of our farming communities, and something which many of her MPs in rural areas will have to go back to their constituencies later this week to explain. And on defence, we will always welcome any additional investment in our armed forces and capability.
But there isn't any.
Though I note, Madam Deputy Speaker, nothing was said about when 3% will be achieved. All we heard was that in the intelligence service spending was to be included in defence spending to flatter the numbers. We left the party opposite a fully funded plan, which they didn't over for a year. But now, what we get is the Chancellor's own black hole on defence spending, the lack of a timeline on when we will achieve the 3%. Instead, we get a £30 billion bill for the Chagos surrender, money which should go to our brave armed forces, rather than is being reported funding lower taxation in Mauritius. The first tax cuts for which this Chancellor has ever been responsible are in Mauritius. Mr. Speaker, we would have made different choices. We would not have killed growth with huge tax rises and new regulations. We would not have talked down our economy and the great businesses up and down our country. We would be focusing on efficiency and productivity in the public sector and not handing out pay rises with no strings attached. And we would be getting a grip on welfare. Labour cancelled our plans for fundamental reform to health and disability benefits that would have seen 450,000 fewer people on long-term sickness benefits. That is a disgrace. And instead of proper reforms to PIP, their own plans are a rushed cost-cutting exercise, so rushed they even had to change them after they had announced them. And their own backbenchers are in full revolt. Yet again, they talk tough, but there is no substance. The Right Honourable Lady has no grip. She has no clue. The markets and the public see a Chancellor completely out of her depth. Having blown her headroom and more from her budget in the autumn, she was forced into an emergency budget in March to scrabble around to try and repair the damage. Today she comes before us again with yet another fantastical tale that she knows will have completely fallen apart come the autumn. So we are not left with stronger foundations, as the Right Honourable Lady would have us believe, but rather another dose of that hallmark for which her actions have made her so renowned: uncertainty and failure, And so there she sits, Mr. Speaker, powerless to resist her disillusioned MPs and her panicking Prime Minister. Like a cork on the tide, the drumbeat for U-turns pounding in her ears. Yet her tone today suggests that all is well. The sunlit uplands await. What a hopeless conceit, a masterclass in delusion. Inflation is up, unemployment is up, growth is marked down, business and households are hurting, investors are fleeing in their droves. The bond market vigilantes circle. And here we have the Chancellor, who refuses to listen. Not only tinfoil, but tin-eared too. And let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, it is working people and businesses who will pay the price come the autumn, with yet more taxes to pay for her weakness and her failures. Mr. Speaker, we cannot afford this spending review. And for many, the growing conclusion is that we cannot afford this Chancellor. Yeah.